So I began this morning by doing something I neglected to do last Sunday morning, and that is express my appreciation to Mark for preaching in my absence. I expressed that appreciation to those who taught the classes and oversight. I've neglected to thank Mark publicly for his preaching in my absence while I was gone. We appreciate these brethren very much for the work that they do. As we come to this time of our worship this morning, devote our attention to the Word of God for our edification, growth, increase in knowledge and strength and faith. We always turn our attention to subjects that we have been very selective about in terms of what will help us, what are relevant, and so is with the subject this morning. Christianity in today's modern world. We might ask, is there? Well, sure there is. Certainly there's Christianity in today's modern world. How do we know that for sure? Because we and people like us are in this modern world. People who are sincerely trying to serve the Lord according to New Testament Christianity. Christianity is in this modern world. We did reference Adam's short talk in Bible class this morning, but last Wednesday evening he had a short talk on which he based his short talk on a question a friend had asked. Is it easy to be a Christian? And Adam's answer to that was his short talk, and it was very thought-provoking. And when you think about that, we all need help. When you think about where Christianity has to be practiced, where we are required to be Christians every day, we all need help. And that's really our purpose here, one of our functions as a church, a collectivity of people of like-minded goals and faith, trying to go to heaven together. We encourage one another and encourage the Christianity that we practice in our own individual lives. But Christianity in today's modern world cannot be explained in one generic, panoramic explanation. It takes more than that. But when you think about practicing Christianity, you think about there are different areas in which we practice Christianity, or in other words, in which we have responsibility as Christians. And therefore our practice is fulfilling those responsibilities in different areas. And we're going to talk about those. But further, as we look at our modern world, it has culture. It has a lot of things have culture, but today's modern world has a culture. And what is that culture? Well, a culture in anything is an integrated mixture of something, several things. And when we're talking about a culture of a society, it is an admixture of culture of, and I'm going to suggest three things that represents a society of people. One of those is what people are believing, what their beliefs are. A second is what their morals are. Where is the moral standard in this society? That determines the culture. And then finally, how people behave themselves. When you put those three together and you mix them up, what you have is a culture that is representative of a society of people. And whatever that is, it's in that environment that we endeavor to practice Christianity. You do and I do. So it's good for us to think about that once in a while, simply to step back, look at the reality, get encouragement, be inspired to do the best that we can do and to be the best that we can be. And that helps you, it helps the church, in every way everyone benefits. So this is our main format chart. This is the chart in which we're going to develop those areas of practicing Christianity. And so we're going to suggest that, first of all, it will be in the matter of something. We practice Christianity in the matter of, well, and that practice here is identified in the matter of the gospel of Christ. Now, what I want us to see with this is that each and every one of us as a Christian has a responsibility as a Christian to practice Christianity in our relationship to the gospel of Christ. There is Christianity in that practice and fulfilling those responsibilities. So what are they? Well, let's look first of all, since we're doing that in the modern world, let's look at the modern world. Do I think that I can represent the modern world in just a few short statements? Absolutely not. But we can make some attempt. The modern world in which we're trying to fulfill our responsibilities is teaching about God is to be eliminated. That's basically what this modern world is leaning toward, advocating. Eliminating God. Even removing his name from some very important things. In God we trust no more. One nation under, many people want to eliminate that. So we live in a modern world that is endeavoring gradually to eliminate God. We're living in a modern world in which religious teaching has many acceptable sources. You think about in the religious world, it's not just the Bible, and hasn't been that way very long, but more and more people are looking to even eliminating the Bible and bringing in so many other sources of where they get their teaching and what the basis of their doctrine is, that they're all, whatever it is acceptable. And then finally, relevance is dependent upon constant change. When you look at the modern world, the thing that makes something relevant is that it can update. It can constantly change to keep itself current and relevant. That's true of a lot of things. It's expected in a lot of different areas. But we'll leave that with that recognition. And so how do we practice Christianity in the matter of the gospel of Christ in such a modernistic environment? Well, let's see what we have to do. Our chart should represent the design and purpose of our thinking. So you can see the design of the chart suggesting to you the flow of thought. Christianity in our modern world, in the matter of the gospel of Christ, requires us to keep every part of the gospel unchanged. Exactly as God revealed it. God does not give us, or anyone, ever, a prerogative to make any changes. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 13, the Apostle Paul told Timothy to hold the pattern, keep that pattern exactly like it was revealed. It also requires that we contend earnestly for the faith. Jude wrote that in Jude the 3rd verse. He exhorted Christians to contend earnestly for the faith, which is an expression meaning the gospel. In other words, we've got to fight for it. Not just believe it, not just passively give acceptance, but what you have to, when required and when called upon, when the opportunity presents itself, fight for it. Speak up, stand, and do everything that we can to defend it. In such a modern world, that's a big challenge. We are to teach, preach, and live the gospel for Christ. This is part and parcel of Paul's instruction to Timothy. In 2 Timothy chapter 4, preach the word, be urgent in season, out of season. He told him to preach the gospel, teach the gospel, and in other parts, of course, we as Christians are required to not just talk about it, but to live it. So when you talk about responsibilities in the matter of the gospel of Christ, we've just touched the basics of what our Christian responsibility is, what the responsibilities are in regard to the gospel of Christ in this modern world. And the more that time passes, if you're experiencing the same thing that I am, and I'm sure we are, it's becoming more and more difficult. It's becoming a greater challenge as the world changes and becomes more like Satan wants it to be. Christianity in today's modern world. Well, there's another matter that we have responsibility for as Christians, to practice Christianity in this modern world, and I think we would all recognize the Lord's church. It's right up there, along with the gospel that Christ has revealed and we have responsibility for, is the church that he built. Practicing Christianity cannot ignore, to any degree, our responsibilities to the church. But we all recognize that the church is in this world, in this modern world. So what kind of environment is it that we face? Hundreds of different churches, as if all were the true church that Jesus built. That may seem like a simplistic explanation, but it's accurate in representing exactly what it is out there, and the idea of hundreds may be an understatement. But there are many churches, each differing. That's why we call it denominational, each differing from the other and divided in doctrine and names and all of that. But yet you talk to them and they represent them as they were the true church, the New Testament church, the church that Jesus built. That's the environment in this modern world. Are they? But also another characteristic in the matter of the Lord's church is the unity that is in the religious world, in this modern world in which we live. I'm calling it in this chart a unity of toleration. Yeah, we're different, as they might say to one another. We have different doctrine, but we have agreed to disagree. So therefore we simply tolerate. We allow you to exist, you allow us to exist. So there's a unity of toleration that exists. What, based upon New Testament Bible teaching? No. Based upon man-made standards of fellowship. And there's all kinds of names for the ecumenical, unity and diversity, and other expressions. But in this modern world, you and I, in practicing Christianity, and I encourage us to have the determination, the will, and the motivation to practice Christianity in the matter of the Lord's church. So what does that involve? It involves advancing his church. Listening to Carl's prayer here this morning, he prayed for that. He prayed specifically that we might not only grow spiritually, but we might also grow in numbers. We want to advance spiritually and numerically the Lord's church. And our direct responsibility is right here. We have interest in the Lord's church wherever it is, but our primary responsibility and accountability is right here. And so our responsibility is to advance the church. But how? Exactly as he built it. Again, we have not been given permission to make any changes, to make any adjustments to our liking or convenience or whatever standard may be used, but to advance the church as Jesus built it. But not only that, to successfully do the work. That's why we're here. We have a mission. It comes from the Great Commission. And that is the work of evangelism, the work of edification. And the Apostle Paul gives these specific instruction in Ephesians, the 4th chapter, in the first 16 verses. That we've got to successfully do the work. But it's difficult. It's hard. It is. And sometimes dealing with situations, dealing with problems within, discouragements within, and especially the opposition from without, and all of the hesitation that people have even to discuss Bible matters with us anymore. Successfully doing the work in this modern world is extremely challenging. To maintain its well-being by personal faithful membership. A Hebrew writer in Hebrews chapter 10 verse 25 stated it in a summary statement where he knew that some of them had been forsaking the church. He commanded them forsaking, not forsaking the assembling. It's not the assembly. Don't make that mistake in that verse. It doesn't say that. It says the assembling of the church. And you think about what that means. Do not forsake the assembling of the church. And so we have a personal responsibility in practicing our Christianity in this modern world by maintaining its well-being personally. But I have a personal responsibility, and so do you. None of us are exempt from that. None of us. We all have equal responsibilities. Our responsibilities differ, and I don't want to make the mistake and a misunderstanding on that. But we're all equally accountable to the Lord. Practicing Christianity in today's modern world. There's another area that gets a little more personal, and it's in the matter of your personal life. When you get up in the morning, go through your day, whatever it is that you do, your work, your school, your responsibilities, whatever your life is at this point in time, you have a responsibility in that personal life to practice Christianity. It's not something you turn off at any time. So when we're out and about, or whatever we're doing, at home, at work, at school, wherever it may be, we have a responsibility to practice Christianity in the matter of the way we live our personal life. You know that, and I know that. I want to encourage us to think very long about that. But our modern world, we go out into the world and we're among people who are defiantly walking as directed by Satan, defiant in their opposition to the Bible, defiant in their opposition to spiritual things. And Paul acknowledged that's the way that some of the Ephesians have been in their past life, but now no more in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 2. But in general, let's just summarize a lot of it by simply saying that this modern world is marked by a moral decline and a breakdown of human decency. There's a lot of ways you could describe it. I find myself appalled sometimes at some of the things I see in the way that people behave themselves anymore, whether individually or as a group, as a mob, as protesters, or whatever it may be. But we have a breakdown in simple, basic human decency, the way that God created us. In 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 13, Paul is talking about these things, and he said those that were evil will wax, that's the American Standard word, worse and worse. So Paul simply made this statement that when it's bad, it's going to get worse. And when it's worse, it's going to get more worse. And so that's just simply the nature of the decline of the modern world in which we live. But that's our environment. Let's be encouraged. We're disciples of Christ. We love the Lord. He is our daily companion. He is our daily strength. He is the one who helps us in so many ways, get through so many difficulties. How is it that we are to practice our discipleship to Him? Well, you think about this child. I think about this a lot. What the world, the modern world, is trying to get you to do is become more and more conformed to it. More and more conformed, if you will, to the image of Satan. Just exactly like he wants people to be in their spiraling degeneration. But we have the responsibility in our Christianity to become more and more like Him. Now that takes some doing. If we go with the flow, we're going down. If we go with the flow, we're getting worse. If we go with the flow, we're losing it. So we have to resist. We have to resist the flow of the world and say, I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do as a Christian. And I'm going to be so devoted to Christ, I'm going to become more and more like Him. And Paul used this language in Romans chapter 8, verse 29, to be conformed to His image. When he came to chapter 12 in the book of Romans, he made a statement that I think is worth our reading and rereading in our personal Bible reading, and of course in sermons from time to time. Paul said, I beseech you therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies, that's this physical body. It's not just our mind or our thinking, it's this physical body. It's an earthen vessel. It's here called your body, a living sacrifice. Now that's what it's supposed to be, a sacrifice. It's put upon the altar of Christ as a sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service. And here's the leading thought in the very next verse. Be not fashioned according to this world. Never are we allowed to become like or develop in any way in the image of the world. So practicing Christianity in this modern world involves that very important element in the way that we live every day. Stated another way, but yet in a very challenging way. Practicing Christianity in this modern world involves upholding a standard. Not their standard, but Christ's standard. A standard of living that represents the purity of the cross. Now when you and I think about that, and what that purity is, and what made it possible, and the cost of it. And yet we have a responsibility in our daily life to maintain a standard that represents that purity that the blood of Christ obtained as the Lamb of God without spot and without blemish. I'm going to include a passage here that Wes read in our scripture reading. Really, in 1 Peter chapter 2, beginning at verse 9, the Apostle Peter is accomplishing with them what we're talking about. But you're an electorate, a royal priesthood, a people for God's own possession, to show forth His excellencies. And then he comes to verse 11. He said, Beloved, I beseech you, as sojourners and pilgrims, you're not permanent here on the earth. You should see yourselves as pilgrims, as visitors, as those who are just simply passing through with your citizenship in heaven to abstain from fleshly lusts which war against the soul. There are fleshly lusts in this modern world that wage war against your soul, trying to win your soul to cause you to spend eternity in hell. And so Peter admonishes them to think of ourselves as sojourners and pilgrims, to abstain from those things in this modern world that cause us to lose that battle. But then having your behavior seemly among the Gentiles. Just a note on that makes that a very interesting expression. Peter used the word Gentiles here in a very special way. It's not Jew-Gentile, Gentile as opposed to being Jews. He used the word Gentiles here in a broad reference to all who are not Christians, to all who are unbelievers. So he's talking to those who are Christians, and he's telling them they're living in their modern world in the first century, and what you are to do is to conduct yourself, have your behavior, the way that you live your life, seemly or honorably, as other translations may express, among the Gentiles. I sometimes use this expression in that way. Linda gets on my case once in a while because it sounds like I'm speaking derogatory of people. Where have you been today? I've been out among the Gentiles. Well, what I mean by that is, I'm not speaking derogatorily of anyone, but among those who aren't Christians, and you sense the difference. You see the standards, you see the dress and the language and all of those things that announce these people are Gentiles in the sense that Peter is talking about here. But the point is, we as Christians have responsibility to practice our Christianity so that our behavior is seemly among them. One more. What else could be so important to us that we could devote some sermon time to it? What else in our practice of Christianity? We could make a long list. We could break this down into a lot of different parts. But there's one more that I want to remind us of, and that is home and family. If there's ever a place where we need to be practicing Christianity, it's in the building block that God made for everything. For the world, for every part of society. For the church is the home. And so there is the need to look at the practice of Christianity in the home and family. Well, that's where especially it is needed for Christians to step up to the standard of the Lord, to the standard of New Testament, and never let that slip away. But what is our modern world? What is the environment for this? It's not good, is it? Because when you think about what's going on in the world today, some of the most powerful influences out there are against your home, are against family and the way that God created it, and destroying it. I saw a figure the other day of, I don't remember exactly what it was, it's less than 50% now of couples getting married. Of course, marriage has fallen in so much disgrace among people that people are no longer getting married. So there's so few people getting married, it's not even thought about anymore. So there is not a marriage to begin as a foundation for building a home or a family. from time to time, I think it's helpful to understand our modern world, to read what the modern world was in the first century, of what we call the Greco-Roman paganism. Paul describes it pretty well. And what he does in that description, I think one of them, several of them, apply to the home. I want to read especially the one in chapter 1 and verse 30. He talks about those that have these qualities and characteristics of those who refuse to have God in their knowledge. I don't want God. I want nothing to do with God. Okay? How do you turn out? Verse 30 says, backbiters, hateful to God, people who actually are hateful toward Him, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil things, and the last one there, disobedient to parents. That was so much a part of characteristic of paganism, of the Greco-Roman society that left God out. That's what paganism means. We live, we conduct ourselves, we develop our government, we develop everything without God. And so as a result of that, there's no respect for authority. Kids grow up without learning to obey, without learning to respect the authority in the home. So what we have in our modern world is what is called sometimes neo-paganism. And that's appropriate. That's exactly what it is, because some of the same qualities in a new form. But one other that we'll mention that's very difficult for me, and I trust for you too. When I see our government, our legislators, state and federal, legislating laws that legalize what is contrary to what the Bible teaches, it's very disturbing. But more and more will people accept those things as being acceptable because they're legal. And that's what's happening in terms of same-sex marriage. Perhaps to some degree, as we will see even more, but hopefully not, with regard to the transgenderism. And so many things that are affecting society that are against what the Bible teaches. That civil law gives approval, encouragement for the propagation and spread of those kind of things. And so that could involve a long list of things that we're all aware of. But it's in that environment that we have to practice our Christianity in the matter of home and family. Practicing Christianity in that environment means this. What we must do, first and foremost, is to uphold God's God-given relationships in marriage. And that is slowly disappearing in our society. I'm going to read Matthew 19 because this is where the Lord reminds us of that. You remember what He said when He was asked a question? They were actually trying to trap Him. The Pharisees, trying Him and saying, and what they asked Him was, is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for any reason? They thought they had Him, where they had some things that they knew would bring displeasure in the public. He answered and said, have you not read? All you need to do is to read the Scriptures. And He said to these Pharisees, have you not read the Scriptures? That He who made them from the beginning, male and female, and said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So that there are no more two, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. Those are words that probably most people could recite. We hear them when we get married. We hear them in sermons. We hear them in Bible classes. We read them once in a while. But the Lord simply reminded them then, reminds us today. Marriage is God-given. God gave a pattern. He joined man and woman together in a marriage relationship. And he let it be known that when those two are joined together, let not man put asunder. Well, this was pursued. And the Pharisees thought they would continue. And so they asked, why did Moses say this? And their question was about, well, what about divorce? And so the marriage, divorce, and remarriage question is often asked. It's a huge matter in the minds of many people. It can be simplified in many ways. I'm not saying oversimplification, but let's just read what the Lord said in Matthew chapter 19, verse 9. I say unto you, that whosoever shall put away his wife, except for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery. And he that marrieth her when she is put away, committeth adultery. Now that's the Lord's standard. And so that's the standard that you and I respect as Christians. That's the standard that we stand for, and that we must be in our devotion to Him. He said, yes, a man can put away his wife, or a wife, her husband, would also be true. But for the cause of fornication, the unfaithfulness on the part of the mate. Otherwise, a remarriage will result in adultery. And so then, as Christianity, we must respect and practice in home and family. This is the Lord's standard. But there's one more thing that I want us to note, and that is those kids. You can't talk about home and family without acknowledging that there will be kids, and we appreciate and love children as a part of families, as a part of the church. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and mother, that you may live long on the earth. Fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but nurture them, train and nurture them in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And so there are some specific responsibilities for raising children according to God's guidelines. That's the matter of home and family. We practice Christianity in this modern world. Everything seems to be against us sometimes. World, society, different standards, degenerating standards seem to be against us. But nevertheless, we always come back to the only standard that you and I can use to go to heaven. And therefore, everything we do must be according to that standard. Back to where we start. Christianity in today's modern world. That Christianity is found in this culture, and we acknowledge it's a mixture of many different beliefs, many different moral standards, but most of them in the world today are very bad and getting worse. And people are acting in ways that we would never have thought possible. Demanding constitutional rights. I demand my right of freedom of speech. But when you want freedom of speech and you say what I disagree with, I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to burn down your house. I'm going to destroy your business. In other words, that's the nature of society in this culture today. And we would never have thought that the world in which we live would have come to such as it is. We trust that each of us can improve ourselves in Christianity by practicing, by learning, by growing, by trying harder in relationship to each and every one of these important areas. Don't ever think we can just describe Christianity in some umbrella, generic statement. Christianity is very specific. It has very specific responsibilities in some very specific areas, and we have addressed many of them today. As we sing this invitation song, there may be someone in this audience that would desire to become a Christian, obey the gospel of Christ in order to be a child of God, and to start practicing Christianity. Accept that. I never will forget, at least for a while, Adam, that second question you asked. He asked a question, is it worth it? We appreciate you for that. Is it worth it? You answered that. Is it worth it to practice Christianity in this modern world? You better believe it is. And never would we ever want to lose going to heaven. Never. Whatever the cost for you as an individual, it's worth it. You may be subject to invitation. Let us know while together we stand and sing.
That song will be